day, so-called dungeons began to appear all over the world, and people began to have unusual abilities. The world entered a new phase. Most often, people collected mana in the sewers. This is a moss of glowing crystals in order to pump up their abilities in dungeons. This day was not successful and the catch was small. And then Bugster noticed something glowing on the wall, almost right under the ceiling. He only had a little more to reach. At that moment, Bugster stumbled and fell into the sewer slurry with a splash. Seeing this, someone in special clothing ran to his aid. It was Judy, the girl who worked with Bugster, and she asked if everything was okay. With worry in her voice, she asked why he was trying to get in there. The Bugster smiled at the girl and said that he was just in a hurry and did not look at his feet. On this day, all television channels reported that today the Big Fan Clan under the leadership of Alan Grabowski managed to make the third raid into the 5-star Tibek dungeon. After the end of his work shift, a man approached Bugster. He introduced himself as Lawyer Robert and offered his condolences over the death of his father. The lawyer handed Bugster something that looked like a medallion, which his father had bequeathed after his death. Bugster sat down near the TV and continued listening to the interview with Grabowski. Alan continued to praise his clan and said that they had worked hard to achieve a great result. He proudly added that thanks to the latest raid and the professionalism of his team, they were able to show the true power of the country. Buster dreamed of becoming one of them and rising to the very top, exploring level after level. He wanted to know how far he could go. He took the medallion left by his father and squeezed it tightly in his fist. The next moment, the medallion was illuminated with such a bright light that its rays passed through Bugster's hand. Suddenly, he felt that reality was beginning to change, and the rays were becoming brighter. Bugster was gripped by fear. He wanted to unclench his hand, but the rays pulled the medallion to his palm. Reality began to dissolve around him. Suddenly, he found himself in some kind of world. There was nothing around except a screen with a welcome message. Welcome. Bugster looked around. All around there were destroyed houses with broken windows. No birds could be heard, and most importantly, there was no sun. While Bugster was recovering, the inscription announced that he was entering the Apocalypse Star. Difficulty: Hell. The next second, blows from robot-like monsters fell on Bugster from all sides. He felt his strength leaving him, and the new inscription read, "You are dead. Survival time is 5 days, 8 hours, 4 minutes, 16 seconds. Having been reborn, Bugster with new strength was ready to enter into an unequal battle with monsters. Then death again, and rebirth again. Then again and again. He managed to go a little further, and the monsters were already different, stronger and merciless. The Bugster died again and again. Gradually moving forward, the time spent in hell increased, as evidenced by the neon inscription. With each rebirth using only his stick, Bugster became a strategist, trying to anticipate his opponent's movements. The number of monsters killed increased, and the skill increased. The survival time was already 12 days, 6 hours, 58 minutes and 4 seconds. And now Bugster had a knife. It made it possible to go even further and increase the survival time. Things went much better with his arrival. Bugster was determined, but remained cautious. The number of monsters increased as Bugster moved forward. They not only struck, the monsters swarmed and tore Bugster's body apart. It was another inevitable death. Having been revived once again, Bugster felt stronger and more resilient, and passed the test again. He tried to find more and more new opportunities to get out of the heap of monsters that attacked him. Trapped among the monsters, Bugster realized that in this position, he had no way to use either a knife or a stick, and he tried any means to survive. Finally, he managed to get out, and now he could deliver fatal blows with a knife, killing the monsters one by one. Having destroyed the last monster, that the quest had been completed. Next, a new message appeared. The total survival time is 36 days, 1 hour, 1 minute, 3 seconds. The destroyed Gone Star is watching you. The hungry star Yongdon is watching you. The whispering star Minster is watching you. The Bugster was determined, and no matter how many times he had to die, he would destroy everyone to achieve his goal. But how did our main character come to such an insane obsession? Let's go back a little to the first minutes of his stay in this world, with an absolutely hellish level of difficulty. The inscription said that mana is now available to him. The level to enter hell. The title of the first rank has been received. The effect will increase with each difficulty level. The strongest skill has been obtained, and hell. The new inscription stated that Bugster was the last embroidered person in this world. He stood in front of the screen and looking around saw no one. No participants, no monsters, only devastation and this blue screen. The Bugster was trying to shout to someone, suddenly turned around and saw mana, the same one that the inscriptions on the screen promised him. Bugster greedily grabbed the pile of crystals and was about to collect moss to upgrade his skills. On that work shift, when he saw mana on the wall of the sewer and could not get it, it was a small piece compared to what he saw in front of him. Bugster greedily grabbed the pile of crystals and was about to collect moss to upgrade his skills. Immediately, an inscription appeared on the screen. Status change. Poisoned, paralyzed. Bugster fell to the ground. He began to grab his throat and choke. Out of the corner of his eye, Bugster saw a screen with a message that his stamina and health were decreasing. A new message appeared on the screen. You are dead. Survival time is 0 hours, 4 minutes, 32 seconds. Dust killed you. Bugster lay and thought that it was all a dream. He did not understand where he was, in the dungeon or in reality. When he came to his senses, the inscription on the screen reported that the quest First Night in Hell, mission to live until dawn, had been discovered. The Bugster wanted to know who controls all this and rushed off, not yet understanding whether he would escape from someone or run towards the monsters. This was just the beginning of the quest, and Bugster had already received a message that he was dead again. The survival time was 5 minutes and 22 seconds. He knelt down and began to pray furiously, asking the Almighty what he was doing wrong. As soon as he was reborn, he began to pray and meditate. After the 11th death, the inscription appeared on the screen. Resistance to poisons and paralysis. He vaguely remembered one moment from childhood, when his father taught him to breathe slowly, not yet understanding why this was necessary. During his meditations, he breathed slowly, inhaling and exhaling poisonous dust, and by the 14th death, Bugster's resistance to poisons increased. He was able to extend the time until death by inhaling polluted air. After doing a few more meditations, Bugster increased his resistance to paralysis, and after the 28th death his body became light, and the survival time was already 1 hour, 41 minutes, and 21 seconds. The level was increased, the concentration of poison in the blood increased. This message first frightened Bugster, but then he received a rare gift: poisoned blood. The poison no longer caused damage. Bugster was delighted that he could now collect the crystals without causing harm to his health or losing stamina. He decided to test this gift and went in search of crystals. Collecting mana, he made sure that the gift really worked. Bugster no longer felt suffocated and could breathe deeply. The Bugster collected so much mana that he had an inventory where he could store his found and acquired items. While sorting out his inventory, Bugster suddenly felt some kind of anxiety. Something was wrong. From somewhere there was a monotonous buzzing sound that was getting closer every second. A whole swarm of huge mosquitoes was approaching him. They flew straight towards the Bugster. He tried to escape, but the screen told him that you were attacked by a level 3 mosquito. Thanks to the title of the strongest in hell and his increased abilities, Bugster was able to fight off some of the insects. But there were too many mosquitoes. They began to penetrate his body through his mouth, and then completely enveloped him in one cocoon consisting of insects. The next moment, those thousands of creatures that were outside and inside the Bugster exploded simultaneously. The Bugster was dead. He was able to last in hell for 6 hours, 18 minutes, 1 second. Bugster lay on the ground and read the inscription on the screen. New level. 100 monsters poisoned and killed at the same time. Average achievement obtained. Poison blood effect increased. Bugster looked at his hands. He realized that the mosquitoes were destroyed because they drank his poisoned blood and exploded. The next message threw Bugster into panic. His condition has worsened. He has received an infection and is gradually beginning to lose his health. And again the message on the screen. This time he received the general skill disassembly. Due to the bacteria accumulated in his body, his health dropped below 10%. Bugster was already waiting for another death. But thanks to the title of Last Man Standing, the slow regeneration of his body began. With the infection condition cured and resistance to it increased, Bugster sat and remembered when he gained the dismantle skill. Having fully come to his senses, Bugster decided to find out what the disassembly skill does, and picking up a nearby chair, threw it on the ground. The Bugster used the disassembly skill and the object rose into the air, the nails themselves falling out of the parts. In a matter of seconds, the chair decomposed on the floor into the individual parts that it had previously consisted of. He picked up one of the pieces and thought, if he can take things apart, then maybe he can create something from them. From a chair leg and nails, Bugster was able to create a primitive weapon. Along with this, he gained the crafting skill. He rolled up his sleeves and decided that it was time to create a safe shelter for himself to hold out in hell. As time passed, Bugster sorted through his inventory and wondered how long he could remain in this ruined place. While wandering around the dungeon, Bugster accidentally stepped on a crumpled newspaper and picked it up. Having started reading articles, Bugster acquired a new skill, knowledge of a foreign language, the ability to communicate with monsters. He looked around while everything was calm. Bugster decided to deal with the dead mosquitoes. Perhaps he could also use the disassembly skill on them. He collected them in a pile and got to work. The following inscriptions appeared on the screen. The sting of a hellish mosquito was received, a common one. The wing of a hellish mosquito was common. The blood of a hellish mosquito was rare. Now he had to assemble something from these parts, and he began to tinker. The screen showed the inscription. The hell dart is rare. All that was left was to figure out how to use this primitive small weapon. Before Bugster had time to create the last dart, it suddenly began to disappear in his hand, and in its place some kind of solar glow appeared. In his hand was an egg the size of a fist, as the screen reported. Unidentified legendary egg created successfully. Crafting skill improved. A new message appeared on the screen. To find out the contents of the egg, you need to monitor it. It can be alive or dead. You can revive it using certain skills, conditions, and rewards. Suddenly, Bugster heard some rustling and slow steps. He quickly hid around the corner and began to wait. The steps were already close, and he carefully looked around the corner so that he would know what to fear and who to fight. It was a goblin. He looked into the room and began to sniff. Bugster looked out again, and at that moment their eyes met. This was very careless on Bugster's part. The goblin swung his sword at the exact spot where Bugster had just been sitting, the sword whizzing right over his head. The Bugster remembered the stairs and ran towards them to escape, but the goblin did not lag behind. He soared through the air, catching up with the Bugster. The Bugster took out a stick with nails on the end from his inventory and was ready to attack. He turned sharply and struck a blow that the goblin did not expect. He flew down the stairs. The goblin instantly jumped up and began to approach Bugster. An inscription appeared on the screen that this was a monster of the 20th level, and his name was Goblin Red Helmet. The Bugster fought back as best he could, but the difference in their levels gave the goblin an advantage, and he was faster. The monster said something, but Bugster did not understand his language and continued to defend himself. The Bugster opened his inventory again and threw several poison darts at the goblin. One of the poisonous darts hit his hand, and it immediately began to become covered with purulent blisters. With one swift movement, the goblin cut off his damaged arm without hesitation. The next second, the goblin disappeared, as if he had evaporated, but Bugster was on his guard. The next moment, the monster appeared above Bugster's head and was ready to deal him a fatal blow. Bugster did not have time to react to the goblin's attack and was defeated. Bugster was ready to die again, but the monster left Bugster and walked away, and Bugster was able to make out his words that there were still people here. The Bugster lay and looked at the screen. The health level dropped below 10. Body regeneration was activated, thanks to the title of Last Survivor. The next message was that the quest First Night in Hell was completed successfully. The screen again reported that based on the results of the passage, due to the difference in levels, Bugster received a golden chest. There are 14 days before the next quest, and you can use the Stone of Return. He clenched the medallion in his fist and sighed with relief that he could finally return to reality.